Washington's through 9 spring practices now and a scrimmage.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. I'm the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen today. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Lars, we're recording this after we got back from Washington's 9th spring practice, which was a scrimmage on Saturday afternoon. Jedd Fisch said they got through 104 plays. I stopped counting after 1 because, that's not necessarily a snap count that I'm going to keep track of. But saw a lot of good things, but we've got to start on the bit of a bummer side of things first, and that is edge rusher Zach Durfee, who you and I discussed last week. We saw him leave the field last Saturday with what appeared to be an arm injury, and Jedd Fisch confirmed today that he is not going to be around for the remainder of the spring, as he said he needed to have a procedure to repair something in his elbow. But on the positive side, he said it's going to be a 2-month recovery process and that the team is expecting him back for the beginning of fall camp.
Right, and because we can kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. When we saw that injury happen and when we saw Durfee came off, we kind of knew it's like, oh, he's a pretty tough kid. It's one of those where it's like, okay, you just kind of hope it's not a months, plural, into the season type of injury where it didn't look necessarily like it would be. But again, based on the emotion and just kind of natural things, and obviously he walked away kind of with his arm propped up, where it's like, okay, well, is it the shoulder or is it the elbow? I think it's kind of a sigh of relief. Again, you don't ever want an injury regardless, but it's more of a sigh of relief that it's the elbow and not a shoulder, right? Because that gets into a whole nother issue. And especially being an edge rusher, that kind of can go down a real dark road real quick. So I think it's good knowing that they won't have to worry about trying to fill the portal guy or trying to bump somebody else up. You can get him back. And they saw certainly enough from him in spring to where he can clearly run the defense. It's not a matter of, oh, well, is Durfee a fit in the defense? It's like, no, he is. He can work his way back in fall camp. We just need him ready by the end of September for that home opener.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's somebody who, we caveat all these things with the offensive line is not where it's going to be by the time fall camp rolls around. And we know that. But Zach Durfee, regardless, has looked really, really good, even when going against Drew Asapardi, who is far and away the best offensive lineman as of right now on this team. And it's something where the more we look at it and the more that's just going on throughout this process, I've been really, really impressed by the defense. And again, there's the caveat of, the pass rush should look really good against a really inexperienced offensive line, but you still want to see it. You still want to make sure that those things happen. So that's one thing, and getting those solid reps in and just stacking those days and getting better and learning what you can do, trying different things. That's all just a part of what spring practice is about. So Zach Durfee is somebody who was really impressive, and it's nice to just kind of see him, or it was really to be able to see him go full bore after everything that was the 2023 season and, the NCAA ruling changing this week on transfers and everything, which just kind of makes last season even more ridiculous in our opinion. But that's one thing where we're excited to see him come around for fall camp, and I think that he's going to have a really, really big impact this season. And Lars, with that being said, we saw a whole bunch of other standouts on the defensive side of the ball. I want you to just kind of pick your favorite.
Well, so I'm going to go. Well, actually, I'm not going to go to my favorite. I'm just going to kind of segue off of that into one of the guys that you've always been high on. That's Lance Holtzclaw, where I think, again, you never root for an injury, but it kind of does reinforce, hey, let's give Lance and Voy, or Lance and Jacob Lane, which we've seen at times this spring, more chances to play together, so that way guys that are going to be in the program longer get used to playing with each other and get used to kind of just learning and playing and being on the same field as each other. Because Lance was one guy today that really popped for me, where again, to your point, where had a number of kind of what I'll call breakups at the line or whatever you want to call it, and a number of pressures. You can probably say he had a couple of sacks again for what
pseudo sacks.
Right. Again, where there's a number of times where we're looking and say, okay, the play still gets off, but again, we had that conversation. It's like, okay, does he get rid of that ball? Regardless, having these guys, especially like guys like Lance, where he hasn't had much game experience, right? Getting these guys as much first and second team reps, preferably first team reps as possible with now Durfee being out. I think it's kind of good to see Lance is basically a guy that's kind of taking advantage of every opportunity that he gets, which again, we've known that that's the type of person that he is. But again, it's still under a new coaching staff in a new scheme. It still reinforces, hey, you know what, Lance can be a guy if Durfee does need to come off for a couple series.
Right. And that's something where it's nice that you mentioned that, because I had him counted for, the pseudo sacks where, all you're going to do is touch the quarterback and they're not even going to blow the play dead. Refs are going to let them finish out the rep and everything. But I had him at 1.5. One of them he combined with Jacob Lane. But it's something where he's another guy that we highlighted last fall on the show, where we discussed his burst. We discussed his physicality, that as he continues to grow and add weight and add strength, that he can become one of those true 3-down kind of players. And I think he's going to have an opportunity, not necessarily be a 3-down player this fall, but he's going to have to step into a bigger role where, as you said, he has been playing a lot with the second team. And he's somebody who, you're right. I am very high on him, and just, we see all the traits that are there. And it's always just been a matter of putting them together. And it's something, when I got to speak to him a couple months ago at an NIL event, one of the things he said was, it's really cool because, I, throughout the recruiting process, I got compared a lot to Josh Uche in terms of, my athleticism, my body type, and the style of roles that coaches wanted me to play. And he said, the first coach who made that comparison was Jason Kaufusi, Washington's new defensive line coach. And he went on to say, it's really cool that, another player that, another guy that coached Josh Uche, Washington defensive coordinator Steve Belichick. So it's kind of cool how all those things kind of came full circle for him. And that's just, it's a really fun thing to note, especially in a pass rush group where, there were pressures last season, but it was last in the Pac-12 in sacks with 22 of them. So you're looking for somebody to step up, and he certainly looks like a guy who can do that. And with that being said, I actually, there's one play in particular that I want to talk about, and I think it was the most impressive pseudo sack, as we'll call it, of the day. And that went to freshman Kamori House, where they lined him up as an outside linebacker, something we saw a lot on his St. John Bosco tape. And this one I would consider a sack no matter the situation, because he exploded off the edge. And I can't remember who's playing left tackle, but he's lined up at a 9 and just explodes off the edge and is around the edge and gets Damon Williams before he can even finish his drop back. He got in the backfield that quickly, and he's somebody who, as he continues to add weight, if he can continue playing with that speed, he's going to be a really, really fun chess piece in this defense.
Right. And I'm glad you highlighted that play, because it almost kind of symbolizes what the plan, at least going into the fall is, or going into the summer with this defensive coaching staff, where they might not have a 5 or 6 top end guys, but there's a bunch of guys that they can kind of do different things with. And Kamori House is another example of that, where similar to Lance Holtzclaw last year, where, okay, we can't give him too much, but what Jacob Lane, right? Another example where it's like, it was a 3rd down package, right? It's like, hey, this is what we just want you to master this year, right? Maybe a couple other things, but this is something where we see your potential. We've seen, and to your point, that explosiveness. This is something, if you want to get on the field this year, this combined with special teams is what you're going to have to do. And so taking that opportunity in spring camp, that's the perfect time to do it, right? Where before you get into fall camp and you add the transfer portal guys in and whoever else, this is the time to shine for those younger players, freshmen, redshirt freshmen, even true sophomores, where it's like, hey, and even there's not really too many juniors that have played without a ton of experience at this point, even in game experience. Even Javon Parker, he doesn't have any starts. He's got a ton of game experience, right? So it's one of those first couple of year guys where it's show us what you can do, show us why we should play you, and then we'll find the scheme to fit, right? The scheme is so versatile. We've said it a number of times, where there's a number of roles for guys on this team, no matter what your spot is on the depth chart, per se.
Absolutely. And Lars, that being said, there's some transfer portal news and somebody who's been really taking advantage of that situation. And we'll get there right after a message from our friends over at LinkedIn, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses. Get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that might not have the time or resources to hire. And that's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to help make the hiring process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, Lars, over the last week or so, a really hot button issue on this particular program has been cornerbacks Jordan Shaw and Devon Banks. I was pushing for Devon Banks to start because, I felt that he had the experience and just a little bit more under his belt to be able to give him that edge. And you've been pushing for cornerback Jordan Shaw, just liking his upside and everything like that. And on Friday, we saw Devon Banks at the portal. And Jordan Shaw, as you and I discussed before the show, has been one of the best corners on this roster throughout spring camp. And he had another fantastic day on Saturday. He's really taken advantage of this role of Devon Banks deciding to look elsewhere, which is probably a smart decision for him as well, just in terms of, all the competition in the room. And he's somebody who can certainly go and start somewhere else. But let's start with Jordan Shaw.
Right. And I mean, that's to correct you, because nothing you said was theoretically wrong. But I would just say Jordan Shaw has been one of the better defenders. Just doesn't matter which position, right? I mean, because again, it's not even just the defensive back room, but wherever he's played, whether it's been, again, it's most of that nickel position, the Husky position, the Elijah Molden position, for if you want to just make an easy comparison for Husky fans, but a little bit different, right? Where Steve Belichick
definitely different, yeah.
But it's in that similar concept, right? Where they star Husky, whatever you want to call it, but he's just made play after play, and there was even a play today where I don't know if it was Will, I think it was Will Rogers was a quarterback. Actually, no one. Speak of the notes. I believe it was Will at quarterback where Shaw. So he goes 6 of 6, and then again, I look like beside the 15 to 10 yard line on the far side of the field. Shaw, I credit him with a PBU, but if he breaks on that ball maybe a half second earlier, that's a pick six going the other way. And that one is going to the house in about 5 seconds. So like that one, to me, that's what Jordan Shaw possesses. And that's the upside of Jordan Shaw, right? That's, again, he's nowhere near filled out. He's nowhere near his peak. But when I just looked at him, and then you kind of pair to it with the relationship he had with John Richardson, you give that good talent, good coaching, and this is no disrespect to Devon Banks. We saw him, he made a couple interceptions this spring, right? So Devon is clearly going to, have success elsewhere, right? No matter where he ends up, I put that tweet out there. I'm like, hey, like wherever he ends up, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to ball out. So I have no doubt about that. But then you look at maybe just the scheme fit, and it's kind of like both are going to be long-term guys. So would you rather have them both? And probably Shaw just for the development and Devon for his development. Just better to go find a safe landing spot, because Devon's going to find a P5 or his P4 program now, no doubt, because I mean, there's no way he doesn't start in one of the three major conferences. But Shaw at the same point, that's why I would not be surprised if he's your starting nickel, just because he's so athletically gifted.
Absolutely. And that's something where that's what they've been looking for, where I really liked the size that Devon Banks could kind of possess at the position as well, where, it's something when we look at Kyler Gordon in the NFL, just to bring it back to another Husky, where Devon isn't the athlete that Kyler Gordon is, but it's something where they ask him to move inside a lot with the Chicago Bears. And he can be a really big nickel with that size, that strength, all that, just all the things that you want on an outside corner. And then you just put him on the inside because he has the footwork and everything else that you need from the technical side of things to stick with guys in the slot. So that was one of the reasons that I was really pushing for Devon Banks. But that was like one of the things that you and I talked about, where you're going to win either way. You really like both these guys. And when you look at just the competition at the position, it's really, really tough. And for somebody like Devon Banks, who definitely feels like he's waited his turn at this point, where he of course he had some bad luck with the injuries as well, where he played so well to start the 2023 season, had 4 PBUs in the Boise State game before hurting his shoulder and being done for the year against Tulsa, that he's somebody who it felt like he had paid his dues. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to push for him, was because we knew what the upside was. We'd seen it before, and it felt like everything was starting to come together for him. But I can't say I blame him personally for looking elsewhere. And I have a feeling where, especially if we see one more guy transfer out of this cornerbacks room, that maybe, depending on who else might hit the transfer portal, that Jedd Fisch, John Richardson are going to look to bring in one more big time addition. But with Lars, with that being said, we've spent the first half of the show on the defense. We should switch over to the offensive side of the ball as well. And The only place to start is we've talked about Damon Williams so much, and rightfully so, but Will Rogers had a really, really good day.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where once Will has kind of gotten more situated in the offense, and again, he's a football savant, right? He knows the offense, and his dad coaches football, so he's clearly been around the game long enough. It was more or less kind of just like an interesting feeling out period. Like, let me kind of just understand who I'm throwing to. I really kind of, I arrived in time, but it's still late in terms of he didn't get offseason work with Denzel or Giles or things like that, where he got to meet him, right? But you're not immediately going to say, hey, I'm also kind of in the portal still, and kind of not, so let me go throw some routes to you and see if I want to actually keep my name here or not. But once Will is settled down, and again, this is still with the caveat of probably even with a better offensive line, he'll look even sharper. But to that point on that drive, it goes 6 of 7 or 7 of 8 and had the shovel pass a la Mike Leach to Jonah Coleman, I believe, or somebody in the end zone for a touchdown.
Yeah, it was Jonah Coleman.
To cap off that drive. But when you look at it, his drive, it was Decker, Coleman run, Rashid had 2 catches. Giles had a catch. Somebody caught a first catch where it looks like in my notes it says Bush, but no, it's honestly Boston. It's Boston. My handwriting is so terrible. It says Boston.
Hey, mine too, man.
And so that's exactly what shout out. But that's what is kind of what we expected of Rodgers, right? He's the point guard. He's that quarterback. Just get the ball out, find it in space, and that's what we've seen when he's in the offense. What we've seen from Damon in that kind of different realm is Damon's got a little more downfield zip, but I still think in terms of this concept, safety, understanding, that's why Rodgers will always be the one, right? Again, you could say Damon took some first team reps, which he has. I guess to be fair, he has taken first team reps, but I don't think when we spoke, we won't get into too much because we'll save it for Tuesday's show. But when we talked after the practice with the coaches, you could clearly say it's like, hey, it's gonna be a competition because we don't want to close that book. And what that basically confirms is Damon is cooked well enough in the spring to give himself a fighting chance in the fall when we refigure out the offensive line. Will still be the one. Damon will get his shot, and then if again, like kind of what we talked about, where it's a hard to envision Will Rogers not starting the season, but if they struggle and go 2-2, or I mean, they're not going 1-3, but let's just say they go 2-2 in the first 2.
Sure.
You can probably start to roll, or the first 4, right? You can start to roll with Damon. You can have more faith to try and, hey, let's see what Damon can do for a quarter. And then if he goes, cool, right? Because at 2-2, you're kind of all bets are off at that point. Whereas they really should be 4-0. Again, you don't want to schedule peak too much, but they really should be 3-1 or 4-0 when you get into the end of September. So to me, that means Damon has probably played a couple backup games. Will has started those games. Damon has finished them, similar to how Michael Penix started against Michigan. Dylan Morris finished off the second half for no other reason than they cooked him in the first half. So it's like if the offense can do that well, that will actually help Damon and not really need to have that competition, because if the team wins, it doesn't matter. They'll both play to some degree, and then will end up getting more games. But I do think it worth noting, Damon, I think, has made it more of a competition than even we thought in the first week and a half of practice.
You're absolutely right. He certainly has. Also, I think he meant Michigan State, not Michigan. That game ended a little bit differently.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Dylan Morris didn't come in against Michigan. So yeah, Michigan State. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
No, I got you. But I think when we talk about Will, one of the things that we'd really been hoping to see from him a little bit more was some better ball placement at certain points, where there were certain points where it looked like he was just a little bit rushed. And, some of that probably had to do with the offensive line. Some of that had to do with a couple other things. And the best throw he made today, where I want to get to Damon, who I think made the play of the day, but Will had himself a really nice day. I've got him listed at, let me double check my notes here. I've got 3 touchdowns here for him. No, 4, excuse me. I didn't write down the Jonah Coleman touchdown as well. But the most impressive one was the 30-yard score he had to Denzel Boston, where Denzel, we saw that he's human. He had a drop today, which is his first one of the spring. So, he's human. It does happen. But he also came back and made a fantastic grab where Will dropped it in the bucket in between Thaddeus Dixon, who was in coverage, and McKellisteen, who I don't even think he was late to get over. I just think that Denzel was in the right spot at the right time, and Will made a perfect throw into the left corner of the end zone right in front of us. So it's just nice to see Will coming along, where at certain points we're saying, oh, he's got to just improve the touch on the deep ball a little bit, where, it looked like it was being underthrown here and there. And, these are all things that are going to happen when you're working with a new receiving core and you're starting to just kind of have that feeling out process, especially being in a whole new offense with so many moving parts around you between not just the offense itself, but a new coaching staff and just so many new and young players, especially coming in, that there's going to be a little bit of a growing period. And I think Will is starting to settle in really nicely. We saw him throw a touchdown to freshman tight end Decker DeGraff as well, who's another guy who had a really great day. But it's just nice to see him coming along just so far. And Lars, speaking of Decker DeGraff, that's somebody that we definitely want to touch on a little bit, but we're going to take a quick break real fast. And we're going to give a shout out to our good friends over at FanDuel because it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and I'm going to say it one more time, and I know I'm wearing a Sonics shirt, but you got to make sure you get those bets on the Celtics in. We're recording this before they play their first game on Sunday, but I believe in my guys, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis might be that X factor. Love me some Drew Holiday. You combine all those things, and hey, hopefully that's the team coming out of the Eastern Conference and winning the finals. And that's, I just got to make sure I got that in there. So Lars, Decker DeGraff has been, I'm going to say it. I think he's been the most impressive tight end we've seen so far. And I think Whitmore has done a really, really good job. I think he's had a really nice camp, but we kind of expected him to step into that bigger role. And he did that really well. Ryan Otten has also been solid. We've seen him make some plays. We've seen him grow. We've seen him stay healthy, which is really good. But I don't think he's done anything that's, and I don't think I've seen him do anything that made me say, wow. And Decker DeGraff has done that. Where as a true freshman, he's got good size. He's made some really nice adjustments on some back shoulder throws. He's done a lot of things where I don't know if it's necessarily over the top, like, wow, this guy's going to be Brock Bowers as a true freshman, but he's doing enough to push himself into the conversation for more playing time. And I really like what I've seen from him so far.
We always love a good Brock Bowers reference here, man. What could have been? But to your point, yeah, like I think Decker's basically done everything and more than we thought he would need to do in the spring, right? Where we looked at that room and it's pretty bare, right? Quentin Moore and 3 guys. That's yeah, who's the third?
Yeah, 3 guys. Yeah, you're right.
Either way, but either way, go ahead.
I was going to say Charlie Kroll being the one who's not here right now, but Owen Coots, another guy. Shout out to the walk-on Owen Coots. He's been really impressive in the move to that position.
Okay, no, that's the name I was forgetting. Because I knew there was a third body right now in the room, not because Charlie Kroll obviously coming into the fall. But I mean, Owen Coots, I think again, give me 30 seconds. Yeah, Owen Coots and Cameron Sermon, like those are 2 guys who kind of almost like staples of the program where they've been here for so long and just they've been surprisingly very adequate at what they've been asked to do. Again, now we're in no means saying that those 2 are going to be, starting and anything like that. But again, it's those practice reps don't get wasted when Demarcus is throwing to Owen Coots or to and similar to really anybody throwing to Camden Sermon, where he actually did miss one today. But again, we've seen him make a number of plays over the spring where it's like, again, it's just kind of nice to see, like, even when you get down that roster where these guys are still kind of making plays. And so you're still not wasting these reps, right? These quarterbacks where we talked about it, right? Where why is Jeremiah Hunter working almost exclusively with the second team? Well, it's because Damon Williams needs some help. Like, let's just be real. Let's call it what it is. Need some help. Like, not if you give them just 3 or 4 walk-ons, and no disrespect to walk-ons, like that's not going to help a young freshman quarterback develop. So being able to see both those guys kind of have their moments this spring, it's kind of been a little underlying nice tale to have.
Absolutely. And so just, I'm not correcting you when I say this, but just kind of a note that we had from today was, it was the other way around where we saw Jeremiah Hunter working in Denzel Boston's role with the first team, and Damon was working a lot with Denzel Boston on the second team. So there was just a little bit of a switch up. It looked like just to kind of see some different things to get, it looked like to get Jeremiah and Will Rogers a couple more reps together as well. So that was just an interesting thing to note, but I got to talk about it because it just, I need to bring it back up. Devon made the play of the day today where he had a really impressive 25-yard touchdown to Keith Reynolds in the front right corner of the far end zone, where Demond, just one of the things that Jimmy Doherty said, and shout out to him for it, was that this is a kid who should still be in the hot lunch line. And he's here playing college football at Husky Stadium. Fantastic quote. Love that. Use it in my story over on Huskies Wire. So make sure you go check that out as well. But when he said that, it was, and this play was just the perfect just encapsulation of that, because Demond drops back, doesn't see anybody open, sees that the offensive line is starting to break down really quickly. So he steps up in the pocket, and while still on the run, just drops a perfect dime right in the bucket for Keith Reynolds, who was draped in coverage by Jordan Shaw, by the way, and just drops it right in the bucket for the first touchdown of the day. And it was just a perfect throw, and it was just a great look at what the future of this program could be between, honestly, both of those guys, where Keith Reynolds is somebody who I'm really excited about. I really like what he brings to the table. And just seeing that play and that connection not only shows how far Keith has come as somebody who I remember highlighting a lot before spring got underway, saying, hey, this is a guy to keep an eye on. This guy's really exciting. He could do a whole lot. But just seeing Demond and that maturity that Jimmy Doherty was talking about, saying, he's light years ahead of where he should be right now, just based on his age and being an early enrollee and all these things. So that was just all really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing for me that's been a constant 1 through 9 with Demond Williams is his pocket awareness, right? Where we've thought a number of times that, actually, to your point on that play, right, where he's stepping up, he's not just abandoning and trying to run. Where he did break out a couple runs where he even blew past us on the sideline, doing about 25 miles an hour, it felt like. But that's, again, another separate point that makes Demond Williams good. But it's good to see a freshman quarterback, or really even let's just say the first 2 years in your college experience, your first reaction when you sense the pressure, look at his eyes. He's always looking for a way up and around the pocket, up and out of the pocket. He's not looking.
He never looks down.
He doesn't look down,
and he doesn't look going.
And he doesn't look back. That's the other thing too, where it's like he doesn't go, oh, okay, just abandon ship. He doesn't have that. I love Jake Browning, but the Jake Browning spin around for minus 10 yards, like every time. Anytime Jake turned like this, you were just going at least 7 to 10 yards backwards. Demond, every time, eyes are down the field. That's how he found Keith Reynolds, right? Where eyes are down the field, the pocket's breaking, and it's that football awareness, right? That high football IQ where you can't really coach that. Like that, it's more coaching that you had in high school, but again, kids can get that experience and not listen to the coaching or not soak it in. Demond is clearly, from time at Bash and even just being around football, I don't even know how far back it goes, but clearly he has soaked up all that knowledge, because every single time the pocket breaks down, like every single time, I have to imagine in an actual game setting, Demond's probably a little bit different than what we've seen in practice in terms of balls probably out quicker. But either way, those decisions are being made in real time and quickly. Whereas, kind of we talked about Austin Mack, hold the ball 1, hold the ball 2, hold the ball 3, hold the ball 4. Okay, buddy, like we need you to kind of do something. Pick one or the other. You can throw it away. You can run.
The clock in your head needs to speed up, and that's the thing we've seen from Demond is that clock is getting faster, and that's something where we've talked about the same thing with Demarcus Davis, where we want to see that clock improve, and we actually have a little bit. We saw him today make a really nice throw for a touchdown, working with the third team a little bit, and it was nice because he's showing that progression. Where I was talking with somebody the other day who's asking me a little bit about Demarcus and just kind of where he is right now. And it was the exact same conversation where I was just saying the flashes are there. We know he can do X, Y, and Z. We know because we've seen him do these things on film, but it's just a matter of adjusting to the college game, making sure that, the game slows down for a little bit, which does take some time. And you just need to make sure that you have a plan. And it's sometimes for young quarterbacks, like with Austin Mack, it was when the play would break down, when somebody wasn't open, it was clear there was no plan. And again, for a true freshman quarterback, that's okay. If this is a 3rd, 4th, 5th year guy, different conversation. But with these 17, 18-year-old guys where it's their first live game action against college competition, it's, in your first couple practices, it's understandable when that plan isn't there, when you see pressure, the play doesn't develop exactly how you thought it would. The coverage is different than how you read it. It's, you're just sitting there saying, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And that is coachable. That's all very coachable. And that's what we've seen from Demarcus a little bit. And we've seen those things improve in leaps and bounds, I feel is the best way to say it, where we saw that because it was a really nice back shoulder throw that he had to free somebody up to get into the end zone. And it's nice to see him making that progression as well, where he's somebody that I think he could be a threat with his legs as well, but he's got to put on a little bit more weight as he continues to just kind of grow and develop, where he needs to be able to just have that little extra muscle mass, take some hits at the college level.
Right, exactly. And for the record, the touchdown did go to Lucchini.
Yes,
I believe is how to pronounce it. And so, like, I to be fair, my full disclosure, I wrote down 31 and circled it.
I did too.
As you were saying, but it's also, as we're having this conversation about, oh, well, Damon needs to be throwing to Jeremiah and Denzel and get those quality reps, right? Well, Demarcus also, with the reps that he's getting, needs to make them as quality as possible, right? And I think we've seen when he does get those reps, and Jimmy Doherty talked about it, he's starting to take those opportunities, right? Where, hey, you're not throwing to Denzel, you're throwing to Lucchini, but can you please complete the pass to Lucchini? Like, it's like, if you can do this, then we'll give you Jeremiah, then we'll give you Denzel, right? And I think it's more, and even Jimmy kind of hinted at it even more, actually kind of said it directly. It was like, they need it in the classroom. And they're not talking about on campus classroom. They're talking about in the film room, in the playbook, and just kind of understanding the schematics of things, which, again, when you bring in two freshman quarterbacks, you're expecting one of them to kind of need a little more time to in that regard or in some other regard, right? But also have the high-end talent level to be like, okay, well, there's not a massive gap from Damon to Demarcus, but maybe in their experience, processing, whatever you want to call it, Damon's ahead of him when they first come in, but they still end up meeting in the same track 2-3 years down the line.
Right. No, that's a great way to put it. And Lars, with that, I feel like we're in a good spot to stop for today. And with that being said, thank you as always for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We've got so much more fun stuff, and it is draft week. So make sure you keep it right here on Locked On Huskies, because on draft night, we are after the first round of the NFL draft, we are going to be doing a live reaction. I'm going to be joined by some fantastic writers over at Huskies Wire in Ben Glassmeyer and Camber Michelle, two fantastic friends of the program. So please make sure you keep it right here for a live breakdown of all that. And of course, everything else we're going to be doing this week with spring practice and just literally everything else. That's all I can say, because there is so much going on. And with that being said, make sure you subscribe to make sure you get that wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button, click that bell so you never miss when we post a new video or go live, all those things. And leave us a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. If you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it all really does help a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Tuesday.